for any business that's in the EU or has a presence in the EU, what's the development of CSRD? Is it something I as a business in the area, I can actually start thinking about now, reporting about now? Where are the people behind CSRD with the development of the directive?
As with most EU, it's not a nice, simple, clean answer. There's a number of different kind of bodies involved in this process. Effectively, it's a EU Commission who kind of like finalize the process, and it goes through Parliament and European Parliament and things like that to become kind of embedded within practices. So it needs to become a directive, if you like, in the process. It then needs to be then links with national EU kind of like national standard setters type of kind of engagement and national kind of governments and regulations, because everything needs to be harmonized within the process. Very similar to what happened with the non-financial reporting directive. So there's, it's a well-established practice. I suppose maybe the slight issue is that the detail of the CSRD and the standards and the measurement protocols are under development. They're not finalized. And so we have an organization called EFRAG, which is a European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. And they are kind of like a sort of like technical kind of expert group, where they're the ones who propose the draft standards, the draft protocols, and the different ideas. And they're made up of representatives from different industries, certainly financial sector, consumer organization. We've got academics in there. We've got regulators. We've got representatives from the different countries, kind of key different countries involved. And then we also have civil society representatives like trade union, consumer organizations, as well as certain kind of like community groups and sort of like trade unions. So we have a kind of there's a sort of like a body of different stakeholders which are there. And that's important because one of the differences between the CSRD is it's not solely focused on investors. It's got a wider remit in terms, so it's actually looking at different stakeholders. So it's a stakeholder orientated standard. So therefore you've got more stakeholders involved in the standard setting process. Is also policy. You got lots of kind of policy relevant as well, because there's lots of kind of issues there. And as I mentioned before, one of the key drivers of the CSRD is to channel funds towards growing the kind of businesses within the EU along a sustainable trajectory. So it looks at kind of like policymakers, public finance providers, as well as regulators as well, because there's a regulatory dimension to this as well. The data has been kind of like, it's multi-purpose, which really makes it different from a lot of the other standards, which were largely about providing data for investors in the capital markets. Whereas this is actually a much more stakeholder orientated kind of approach for multiple purposes. And so there's lots of different people involved in the process, but largely what you get is we've got a sort of an enabling framework that's been passed, as a directive. And then the details are worked on by EFRAG, who go through lots of consultations, they design drafts, draft standards, draft protocols, which are then passed over to the Commission. Commission then sort of like work on it. And then depending upon the recommendations, either they can be put forward as EU Commission type of kind of recommendations, or if they're more radical and substantive, they might need to go to the Parliament for, kind of like to be passed through the Parliament and then enacted through national governments. So it's a little bit complicated, but it is the EU, and the EU are trying to do something. I don't want to kind of trivialize it, but they're trying to do something quite radical here, which actually taken something which is becomes part of a transition plan for a whole as a continent almost. So like they're pushing forward a kind of quite a radical transformation plan. So it's not trivial. It's not just a little, oh, we'll change the way that we report things. It's actually got a real kind of like goal to it, which is transformative. And it's about changing a whole economy of maybe one of the most important economic kind of like blocks that operates within the world right now. I don't know if that's kind of helpful, but it is very much and I mean, and for any businesses or anybody, it's a really kind of like significant transformation. I mean, really, it's important to keep on top of this, to keep your eye on it, to keep look at sort of like FRAG standard, to keep in touch with your maybe if you've got a producer organization or some kind of like coalition there, because you really need to be aware of what's actually going on there. It's a lot of work for one business, but looking for kind of like networks, looking at kind of like different organizations who may be kind of like helpful to assist this, because this is not, it's not massively difficult to do, but it is different. And so therefore, because of the extent of the difference, it's actually going to require quite a lot of planning and quite a lot of kind of organization. Waiting until it hits you is a really bad idea. You want to almost be involved in the, if you can, in the feedback to the standards. If you've got something which is just going to be impossible for your sector, you need to tell them, because they might know or they might not know. But because of the nature of it, it's like the other good thing about the EU, it seems like it's a bit complicated, but there's lots of opportunity for engagement, and if the fact that you don't engage, they're going to go, well, you had the opportunity to talk about it. You had the opportunity to kind of come in and do things. You didn't. How were we supposed to know? So look for consultation process, look for opportunities to engage, because there are opportunities to engage.